After freeing herself up at lunch, Elena decided to drop by home and check on her ailing husband. But quietly entering, she overheard his telephone conversation, and just like that, she sank down from the unexpectedly revealed truth. We welcome you to our channel. If you like our story, don't forget to subscribe and like it. Thank you for your support, and enjoy listening. Monday morning began for Elena with the usual hustle and bustle. Sunlight streamed through the thin curtains, filling their small but cozy kitchen with Alexi's apartment with light. Outside the window, the waking city was noisy. Cars were honking, and the voices of passers-by could be heard. Elena was hurriedly stirring her coffee, glancing at the clock. Today she had a very important presentation, on which her promotion depended. "Alexei, have you seen my blue folder with documents?" she shouted towards the bedroom, adjusting her strict jacket. Her husband appeared in the doorway, tall, fit, with hair wet after a shower. In a business suit, he looked especially attractive, and Elena, as usual, admired him. "I think you left it in the living room yesterday," he said, coming over and casually kissing Elena on the cheek. "Are you nervous before the presentation?" Elena nodded, smiling gratefully. After 3 years of marriage, she still froze at his smile, at the care that, as it seemed to her, she saw in his eyes. Although, sometimes Elena noticed that this care only appeared when he needed something. "Of course I'm nervous." Igor Pavlovich hinted that in case of success, he is ready to discuss my promotion to head of department, she replied, pouring coffee into a thermos mug. "You'll manage," Alexei encouraged, sipping from his cup. "I believe in you. By the way, about work. I seem to have a big deal coming up with the French. If everything works out, by the new year we can afford that trip to the Alps you dream of." Elena brightened, but deep down she noted that Alexei was not talking about her promotion, but immediately changing the subject to himself. As always. The phone rang. Elena looked at the screen in surprise. It was her mother-in-law calling. Nina Sergeyevna rarely called in the mornings, preferring evening conversations. "Good morning, Nina Sergeyevna," Elena replied, exchanging glances with Alexei. The silence on the other end of the line made her wary. And then an unfamiliar female voice said, "Hello, this is Nina Sergeyevna's neighbor, Vera. Your mother-in-law is in the hospital. A stroke. The condition is serious. The doctors say she requires constant care." The kitchen suddenly swam before Elena's eyes. She handed the phone to Alexei, whose face instantly changed. Alarm, fear, confusion, emotions replaced each other as he talked to the neighbor. "I need to go to my mother urgently," he said, finishing the conversation. "But I have an important meeting with investors today. I can't cancel it." Elena looked at her husband, surprised at how easily he said this. His mother was dying, and he was thinking about a meeting. Is that how loving sons behave? "I'll go," she said quietly. "My presentation is today, but I'm sure Natasha can replace me. She is aware of all the project details." Alexei breathed a sigh of relief, too quickly and easily for a man whose mother was in critical condition. "Are you sure? What about the promotion?" Elena put the mug on the table and hugged her husband tightly. "Your mother is more important. I'll take a leave of absence and go to her. She needs care now, and you can't abandon your project. I understand that." Alexei hugged his wife tightly, burying his face in her hair. "What would I do without you?" he whispered. "I'll come as soon as I finish with the French. A week at the most. And then I'll fly in every weekend, I promise." The office greeted Elena with the usual hum of voices and the clatter of keyboards. Natasha, her colleague and friend, raised her eyebrows in surprise, seeing the expression on Elena's face. "What happened? You look like you've been told it's the end of the world," she said, coming closer. Elena quickly explained the situation. Natasha frowned, crossing her arms over her chest. "And you're going to drop everything and leave? But the presentation, your promotion." Natasha shook her head. You know, sometimes I think you put his interests above yours too often. Like with that business trip last year, remember? You refused, so Alexei could go to his training. Elena defensively crossed her arms over her chest. This is different. This is about his mother. She is seriously ill. And why can't he take a leave of absence? Natasha asked directly. Why do you have to sacrifice your interests again? Because his project is crucial for the company, Elena replied. But an inner voice whispered that her presentation was no less important. They had been working on this contract for 2 years. And I'll manage. Natasha looked at her friend with sympathy. As my mother always says, if a woman sacrifices herself for her husband all the time, one day she may find that there is nothing left to sacrifice. Be careful, Alenochka. Igor Pavlovich, a large man with a penetrating gaze, listened carefully to Elena. His office, spacious and bright, now seemed like an impregnable fortress to Elena. Family circumstances, you say? He said thoughtfully, tapping his fingers on the table. How long do you plan to be absent? The doctors say about 2 months, Elena replied, trying to sound confident. Natasha will give today's presentation. She is fully informed. The director shook his head disapprovingly. I must warn you, in business there is no concept of indispensable people. In 2 months, your position may be filled. The director's words fell on Elena's heart like a heavy stone. Everything she had strived for which she had worked late, could disappear. But the image of her ailing mother-in-law, lying, alone in a hospital ward, did not allow doubts to grow. I understand the risks, she replied firmly, and I am ready to accept them. The evening train station was buzzing with announcements, the clatter of wheels, and the voices of those seeing people off. Elena stood by the train carriage with a small suitcase. Opposite stood Alexei, holding her hands. His face expressed concern, but something resembling relief flickered in his eyes. I love you, he said, looking into her eyes. And I am very grateful for what you are doing for my family, for our family. Elena smiled, feeling a lump rise in her throat. And I love you. Take care of yourself while I'm gone. And don't forget to eat properly, not just sandwiches. Alexei hugged her tightly and kissed her. I promise to come as soon as I finish with the French, he whispered softly. And then I'll be with you every weekend. Keep me updated on Mom's condition, okay? Elena nodded, but something in her husband's tone made her heart sink. It was as if he was making a promise he didn't intend to keep. The train slowly pulled away from the platform, carrying Elena into the unknown. The provincial town where her mother-in-law lived greeted Elena with a damp morning rain. Drops drummed on the roof of the taxi that took her to the 2-story house on the outskirts. Nina Sergeyevna lived in a small but cozy apartment on the 1st floor. A Pozhalaya woman with an umbrella in her hands was waiting for Elena at the entrance. You must be Elena? She asked, smiling kindly. I'm Vera, Nina Sergeyevna's neighbor. We talked on the phone. Elena nodded gratefully, shaking the outstretched hand. It's very nice to meet you, Vera. Thank you for looking after my mother-in-law. Vera carefully looked Elena up and down. Something akin to sympathy was visible in her gaze. Nina is in the city hospital. I'll take you there after you leave your things, Vera said with a slight provincial accent. She, my dear, is quite bad. Alexei hasn't come yet. Busy, it seems. Vera said the last words with a barely noticeable bitterness that did not escape Elena. Have you known Nina Sergeyevna for a long time? Elena asked, when they were already on the bus to the hospital. About 15 years as neighbors, Vera replied, looking out the window at the rain-soaked streets. We were good friends in our youth. We planted gardens together, raised children. And then Nina somehow distanced herself. Maybe something in her broke when Petya, her husband died. She started to cherish her Alexei like the apple of her eye. Everything for him. Everything for him. Alina nodded understandingly. She knew that the death of her father-in-law 10 years ago had greatly changed Nina Sergeyevna. Alexei rarely talked about it, but once mentioned that his mother became too protective after losing her husband. Alexei often visits his mother? Elena asked carefully. Vera smirked, and there was more in that smirk than could be expressed in words. Not really, she said, and then, as if catching herself, added more softly. But he's a busy man, a big boss in the city. Nina has been buzzing everyone's ears about how he's making a career there in the capital. She praises him all the time, even when he doesn't show his face for 6 months. The hospital ward smelled of chlorine and medicine. The quiet beeping of medical equipment and muffled voices of the staff from the corridor could be heard. Nina Sergeyevna lay on the bed by the window, pale, drawn, with dropper tubes. Elena involuntarily pressed her hand to her mouth, holding back her emotions. Her always energetic and independent mother-in-law looked defenseless. Nina, look who's come to see you, Vera said softly, approaching the bed. Her mother-in-law's eyes slowly opened. Recognizing Elena, she smiled weakly. The left side of her face barely moved. You have come? She managed to say with difficulty. Alexei? He has an important meeting, but he'll be here in a few days, Elena replied softly, sitting down next to her and gently taking her mother-in-law's hand. And in the meantime, I'll stay with you, okay? In the corridor, Elena spoke with the doctor, an elderly man with tired eyes. The condition is stable, but recovery will take time, he explained, leafing through the chart. Somewhere nearby, a nurse was pushing a creaky trolley with medications. After discharge, constant care and rehabilitation will be required. Massage, therapeutic exercises, sessions with a speech therapist. And how long can full recovery take? Elena asked, feeling a chill inside. The doctor looked at her over his glasses. With good care, 6 months minimum. And that's not guaranteeing full recovery of speech and mobility. 6 months. Not 2 months, as Alexei had said. 6 months away from home, from work, from her usual life. Elena felt the ground slipping away from under her feet. The first days in the provincial town flew by in daily trips to the hospital. Nina Sergeyevna was slowly recovering, and after 2 weeks, she was discharged. Now Elena's life consisted of massage, exercises, cooking, laundry, cleaning, and trips to the pharmacy. Every day repeated the previous one. Alexei called every evening, asking about his mother's health and talking about his success with the French contract. But he couldn't come in the first 2 weeks, citing unforeseen complications in negotiations. I know it's hard for you, he said. But you are my strong girl. You'll manage. You promised to come, Alexei. Elena gently reminded him. 2 weeks have passed. I'll definitely come this weekend, I promise, Alexei assured her. I'll finish with the documents on Friday and come straight to you. Days turned into weeks. The first month passed. Alexei still hadn't come, canceling his trip twice at the last moment. The first time due to an urgent meeting, the second time due to a sudden business trip. Vera helped Elena take care of her mother-in-law, bringing homemade pies and herbal teas. At 60, she was an amazingly energetic and insightful woman. They quickly became friends, and Elena often caught her sympathetic glances. He won't come, Vera said once, when they were preparing dinner together. Alexei has always been like that. He promises golden mountains and then forgets. It's a heartbreak for Nina, and he doesn't care about ruining your career. Elena wanted to object, to defend her husband, but the words got stuck in her throat. Deep down, she was already beginning to understand that Vera was right. On Saturday evening, when Nina Sergeyevna had already fallen asleep after taking her medication, Elena was scrolling through social media. just to distract herself, to feel connected to her former life. A photo from a trendy restaurant in their city flashed on the page of her former classmate Marina. Elena wanted to scroll further, but something made her go back. In the background, at a table by the window, Alexei's profile was clearly visible. A young blonde woman Elena didn't know was sitting next to him. They were sitting very close, shoulders, touching, and laughing about something of their own. Alexei was whispering something in her ear, and the blonde was smiling coquettishly, winding a strand of hair around her finger. Elena's heart skipped a beat, and then started pounding faster. Her mouth went dry. She zoomed in on the photo, hoping she was mistaken, that it was someone who looked like her husband. But there was no mistake. It was definitely Alexei, her husband, who was supposed to be at an important meeting today. In a restaurant, with an unfamiliar woman. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, counting the seconds while Elena stared motionless at the screen. Her first impulse was to call her husband and demand an explanation. But something stopped her. Fear? Unwillingness to hear the truth? Or a vague premonition that this was just the tip of the iceberg? There was a quiet knock at the door. Vera stood on the threshold with a thermos in her hands. "I thought you might need company," she said, handing her the thermos. "It's herbal tea. I collected it myself. It helps the heart when it aches." From the expression on Elena's face, she immediately understood that something had happened. She silently sat down next to her, patiently waiting for Elena to decide to speak. "He lied to me," Elena finally said quietly, showing her the photo. "He said he was at a meeting, but he's in a restaurant with some woman." Vera looked at the photo for a long time, then looked at Elena. The wrinkles around her eyes deepened, as if from internal pain. "Perhaps there is some explanation," she began cautiously. "A business meeting." But her eyes said something else. There was regret, bitterness, and something akin to an old wound in them. "You know something." It wasn't a question, but an assertion. "Please tell me the truth." Vera sighed heavily, as if making a difficult decision. "You see, Elena, I didn't want to interfere, but I know this family too well." She looked towards the bedroom where Nina Sergeyevna was sleeping. When Petya died, Nina gave everything to her Alexei, both love and care and money for his studies. And he became spoiled. He got used to all his desires being fulfilled, and he gives nothing in return. Vera fell silent, gathering her thoughts. I saw how he treated his girlfriends. He would bring them to meet his mother, swear that it was love for life. And a month later, there was a new one, and he was always forgiven for everything. Nina still believes that he was just looking for his happiness. But for me, he just never knew how to value anything. In the silence of the room, the clock on the wall ticked clearly. Rain rustled outside the window. Elena felt the world she had built for 3 years crumbling like a house of cards. "I'm going home," she said firmly. "For a couple of days. I need to check the apartment and talk to my husband. See his face when I ask for the truth." Vera looked at her intently and nodded silently. "I'll look after Nina. Just be prepared for the fact that sometimes the truth is too bitter. Like medicine, unpleasant, but healing." In the darkness of the room, Elena lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling and listening to the breathing of her mother-in-law sleeping in the next room. Tomorrow she would buy a ticket for the morning train, and whatever awaited her at home, she had to be ready to accept the truth, however painful it turned out to be. Maybe Alexei really did have a business meeting, Elena thought, turning on to her other side. But why did he say he would be at a meeting? Then? And why was that woman so close? And why were they laughing? Questions swirled in her head, keeping her awake, forming a mosaic, the picture of which was frightening to the core. The morning train sped through the dreary autumn landscapes. Elena sat by the window, watching the raindrops slide down the glass, creating bizarre patterns. In the 3 hours of the journey, she went through dozens of scenarios for the upcoming conversation with Alexei in her head, but none seemed right. The city greeted her with a gray sky and drizzling rain. The taxi dropped Elena off near the familiar entrance, and for a moment, it seemed to her that everything was as before. Now she would go up to the apartment, and Alexei would meet her with a smile. But the memory of the photo in the restaurant quickly brought her back to reality. The usually noisy entrance seemed empty and echoing today. Every step on the stairs echoed. Elena stopped at the apartment door, listening. Silence. She took out her keys, but at the last moment decided to ring the doorbell. The telephone conversation with Alexei last night was short and tense. "I'll be there tomorrow morning," she said. "I need to pick up some things for your mother." "Okay," he replied after a pause. "I most likely won't be home. Important meeting tomorrow." "On Saturday?" Elena was surprised. "Yes, urgent project," Alexei replied quickly. "You have the keys. Take everything you need." Elena decided not to talk about her suspicions on the phone. She wanted to see his face when she asked about the blonde from the restaurant. In the morning, before getting on the train, she received a message from Alexei. "Felt a bit sick. Will be home. Please buy cold medicine." Something tightened in Elena's chest. The lie was becoming more and more obvious. Yesterday, an important Saturday meeting. Today, a sudden illness. She bought the medicine at the station pharmacy, deciding to play the role of a caring wife to the end. The doorbell wailed piercingly in the silence of the apartment. Steps were heard, and the door opened. Alexei stood on the threshold, in-house, pants and a t-shirt with disheveled hair and a pale face. "Elena," he said in surprise. "You're so early. I thought you'd be after lunch." He awkwardly hugged her, and Elena smelled expensive perfume. Not his perfume, woman's. "I decided to come on the first train," she replied, walking into the apartment and looking around carefully. "How are you feeling? I bought medicine." The apartment was tidy, but something in it had changed. Unfamiliar decorative pillows with a bright geometric pattern lay on the sofa. Fresh flowers stood in the vase on the coffee table. Elena had never bought such pillows, or put flowers in. This vase. "Thanks, I'm feeling better," Alexei said, taking the bag of medicine. "How is Mom? Have the doctors said anything about the recovery time?" Elena took off her coat and went to the kitchen. 2 coffee cups stood on the drying rack, next to the sink, one with pink lipstick on the rim. 6 months minimum, she replied, trying to keep her voice even. "By the way, did you have guests?" Alexei froze for a moment, then shrugged casually. "A colleague stopped by yesterday evening, brought documents for the project." "A female colleague?" Elena asked, pointing to the cup with lipstick. "Yes, Marina, from the marketing department," Alexei replied too quickly. "We're working on the presentation for the French. Would you like coffee?" Elena nodded and sat down at the table. A strange calmness came over her, as if she were observing what was happening from the outside. "Tell me, how is Mom's rehabilitation progressing?" Alexei asked, turning on the coffee maker. "The doctors are optimistic," Elena said instead of answering. "Nina Sergeyevna talks about you every day. She asks when you will come. I don't know what to tell her anymore." Alexei guiltily lowered his eyes. "You know how important this contract is now," he began. "If everything works out, I'll be able to take a leave of absence and come for a week or 2. I just need to finish with the documents." He placed a cup of coffee in front of Elena and sat down opposite her. His phone, lying on the table, suddenly vibrated. Alexei quickly flipped its screen down, but Elena managed to notice the name Christina and a heart next to it. "I need to call your mother," she said, getting up. "I promised to let her know when I arrived. Can I use the landline? Mine died on the way." "Of course," Alexei nodded. It's in the bedroom. I'll take a shower for now. The bedroom greeted Elena with semi-darkness. The curtains were drawn. She turned on the light and froze in surprise. On the bedside table on the side of the bed where she usually slept, there was a bottle of women's perfume. A hair clip with sparkling rhinestones lay nearby. Elena never had such things. Water ran in the bathroom. Elena slowly walked to the wardrobe and opened the door. Among her things hung Chuji blouses and dresses. In the lingerie drawer, she found lace sets that definitely did not belong to her. A lump rose in her throat. So that's why Alexei didn't want to visit his mother. That's why he was so happy that Elena had left. All this time, another woman had been living in their apartment, in their bed. The landline phone was on the table by the bed. Elena mechanically picked up the receiver and started dialing Vera's number, but hearing voices from the corridor, she froze. Alexei was talking to someone. Muffled but furious whispers came from the hallway. Elena carefully put down the receiver, went to the door, and listened. "I told you not to come today," Alexei hissed. "My wife is here." "I forgot something yesterday," a female voice replied. "How was I supposed to know she would show up without warning? She wrote that she would come." "You said after lunch," the woman said indignantly. "I thought I'd have time to pick up my things and leave." Elena pressed herself against the wall, feeling her heart pounding against her ribs. So it was true. All this time, while she was taking care of his mother, Alexei had been living with another woman, in their apartment, in their bed. "Quiet, she'll hear," Alexei hissed. "Leave now. I'll call you later." "And then what?" Christina asked. "Will you lie again that you're busy with the French?" "Christina, not now," Alexei snapped irritably. "Leave before she comes out of the bedroom." "I'm pregnant," Christina suddenly said. 2 months. And I'm tired of hiding. Silence fell in the corridor. Then Alexei quietly cursed. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely," Christina replied. "We need to decide what to do next, and decide together." "There's only one way out," after a pause, Alexei said. "We need to get rid of 2 burdens. We'll put Mom in a specialized nursing home. I've already made inquiries. And I'll divorce my wife as soon as Mom gets a little better. She doesn't need such shocks yet." Elena felt the ground disappear from under her feet. Her ears rang, and nausea rose in her throat. She barely managed to keep from screaming. All this time, she had been sacrificing her career, her future for a family that, as it turned out, no longer existed. "How long will all this take?" Christina asked. "I can't wait forever. 2 months maximum," Alexei replied. "As soon as Mom can manage without constant care, I'll tell Elena about the divorce. The nursing home has already been chosen. All that's left is to finalize the documents." Elena covered her mouth with her hand, holding back a sob. How could he do this? How could he plan to get rid of his mother as if she were a useless thing? How could he betray them both? On unsteady legs, she went back to the phone and dialed Vera's number. After a few rings, the familiar voice answered. "Hello." "Vera, it's Elena," she said quietly, trying to keep her voice from shaking. "It's just as you said. It's even worse." She quickly recounted the overheard conversation. Vera sighed heavily. "I knew he didn't value either you or his mother, but to this extent." The woman's voice trembled. "What are you going to do now?" "I don't know," Elena answered honestly. "But first I'll talk to him. He needs to know that I heard everything." Hanging up, Elena took a deep breath, trying to calm down. Tears rolled down her cheeks on their own, but inside, determination grew. Enough of being a victim. Enough of sacrificing herself for a man who never appreciated it. She left the bedroom and headed for the living room. Alexei was sitting in an armchair, nervously scrolling through something on his phone. Seeing his wife's tear-stained face, he jumped up. What happened? Is Mom worse? No, Elena replied quietly. Mom is just as bad, and it will be even worse when she finds out that her beloved son is going to put her in a nursing home. Alexei's face turned pale. What nonsense are you talking about? He tried to smirk, but his eyes betrayed panic. I heard everything, Elena said, surprised at her own calmness. Your conversation with Christina, about the child, about the nursing home, about the divorce. Alexei froze, frantically searching for words. Elena, you didn't understand correctly, he began. I would never. Enough, she cut him off. Enough lies. I'm leaving and taking my things. You don't have to pretend anymore. She headed to the bedroom to pack the essentials, but Alexei grabbed her by the arm. Wait, let's talk, his voice sounded pleading. It's not how it seems. Oh, and how is it? Elena smiled bitterly. Explain to me. How can this not be how it seems? You cheated on me while I was taking care of your mother. You planned to get rid of both of us. What is there to explain? You don't think about me at all. Suddenly, Alexei flared up. You left, abandoned me alone, all worried about my mother. And who will take care of me? Who will think about my needs? Elena looked at him, not believing her ears. This man, whom she had loved for 3 years, to whom she had given everything, her love, her career, her future, suddenly appeared before her in his true light. If you were a real wife, Alexei continued, I wouldn't be looking for another. But you are never around when you are needed. You are always busy with your career, and now with my mother too. The sound of the front door opening interrupted his tirade. A young blonde woman entered the apartment, the very one from the photograph in the restaurant. Seeing Elena, she froze in the doorway. Sorry, I thought you were alone, she said, shifting her gaze from Alexei to Elena. No, Christina, you did everything right, Elena replied instead of her husband. You came at just the right time. Dan. That moment, Alexei's phone rang. He glanced at the screen irritably, but seeing the caller's name, he turned pale. It's from the hospital, he whispered. From the ward where Mom was. Elena went cold. The conversation was short. Alexei listened, not saying a word, only growing paler. Mom had a second stroke, he said, finishing the call. The doctors say, her condition is critical. He looked at Elena accusingly. It's your fault. You left her to rush here and make a scene. Don't you dare, Elena said quietly but firmly. Don't you dare blame me for what you did. She turned and walked out of the apartment for the first time in 3 years, feeling that she was finally seeing the truth. The train sped through the twilight, carrying Elena back to the provincial town. The landscapes changed outside the window, but she didn't see them. The scene in the apartment, Alexei's angry face, Christina's bewildered look, they were all she saw. And the news of her mother-in-law's second stroke pierced her heart with sharp pain. The carriage swayed on the rail joints, lulling the other passengers to sleep, but Elena couldn't close her eyes. Thoughts rushed through her mind, one after another, bitter, painful, burning with their truth. 3 years of life, she thought. For 3 years I believed in us, in a family, in love. And all this time how could I not see? Her phone vibrated, a message from Vera. Nina is in intensive care. Doctors won't let anyone in. Waiting for you at the hospital. Elena closed her eyes. Poor Nina Sergeevna. She didn't deserve such a son, such betrayal. The thought that Alexei wanted to send his mother to a nursing home still made her feel sick. How could you do that to a person who gave you her whole life? When the train arrived at the station, it was well past midnight. The town was asleep, The streets were empty. A cold wind pierced through her, but Elena barely felt it. It was much colder inside. A taxi took her to the hospital in a matter of minutes. In the admission department, a dim light burned, smelling of medicine and disinfectant. Vera sat on a plastic chair near the duty doctor's office, hunched over and hugging herself. "Elenochka," she said quietly, raising her tired eyes. "You came after all." Elena sank onto the chair next to her, feeling her strength finally leaving her. "How is she?" she asked barely audibly. Vera shook her head. "The doctors aren't saying much, only that her condition is serious but stable. No one is allowed in to see her, but they promise that in the morning you can go in for a little while." "And Alexei?" Elena asked, although she already knew the answer. "He called," Vera replied with a bitter smile. "Said he was leaving," she answered with a bitter smile. "True, that was 6 hours ago. So, by my calculations, he should have arrived already." They sat in silence, broken only by the muffled voices of the nurses and the beeping of medical equipment from the neighboring wards. Elena couldn't hold back any longer. Tears flowed in a torrent, shaking her entire body. Vera silently put her arm around her shoulders, letting her cry it out. He betrayed both of us," Elena sobbed. "All this time. He has another woman. She's pregnant. And he was planning to send his mother to a nursing home. He said she was a burden." Vera remained silent, holding Elena tighter. There was more understanding and sympathy in her silence than in any words of comfort. In the morning, they were woken up by noise in the corridor. Elena had trouble straightening her stiff neck. She and Vera had sat on the uncomfortable chairs all night. Alexei entered the admission department, his suit pressed, his hair perfect, no trace of fatigue or worry on his face. Only his eyes betrayed tension. "How is Mom?" he asked, not looking at Elena. "Stable but serious condition," Vera replied. "They promised to let us in at 8 o'clock for 5 minutes." Alexei nodded and sat on a free chair opposite, ostentatiously burying himself in his phone. The silence between the three of them was palpable, thick as fog. At 15 minutes to 8, a doctor appeared in the corridor, the same one Elena had spoken to on the first day of her arrival. He looked tired, but his voice was firm. "Relatives of Nina Sergeyevna Kovaleva?" Alexei jumped up first. "I am her son." "How is she?" The doctor looked at him attentively, then looked at Elena. "And you?" "I am." "Was her son's wife?" Elena replied, stumbling over the word "was." "The patient's condition has stabilized," the doctor said, "but the second stroke was more severe than the first. There is damage to the speech center. It's hard to say how complete the recovery will be yet." "When will she be discharged?" Alexei asked impatiently. The doctor frowned. "It's too early to talk about discharge. Now it's important for her condition to stabilize completely. Then a long rehabilitation will follow. She will stay in the hospital for at least 1 month, and then she will need specialized care. Can a nursing home be arranged?" Alexei quickly asked. "I have a good place in mind." "Alexei," Elena exclaimed, not believing her ears. "How can you talk about that now?" The doctor looked from one to the other, clearly feeling uncomfortable. "I think you should visit the patient first, and then discuss organizational matters," he said. "You can go in to see her one by one, for no more than 5 minutes." Alexei rushed forward, but the doctor stopped him with a gesture. "The patient asked to see her daughter-in-law first," he said, looking at Elena. "She is conscious and can communicate to a limited extent." Elena nodded and followed the doctor into the intensive care unit. The smell of medicine, the beeping of monitors, the dim light. It all hit her, making her hold her breath for a moment. Nina Sergeyevna lay on a high hospital bed, entangled in tubes and wires. Her face was drawn, Her skin had a sallow tint. But her eyes, the same clear, intelligent eyes, looked at Elena with surprising strength. "Nina Sergeyevna," Elena said quietly, carefully taking her mother-in-law's hand. "How do you feel?" The woman weakly squeezed her fingers and tried to say something. The words came with difficulty, but Elena understood. "You saw him?" Elena nodded, understanding that her mother-in-law was asking about her son. "Yes, he's here, waiting in the corridor." Nina Sergeyevna shook her head, and tears appeared in her eyes. "Not this, you, all, no." Each word came with great difficulty. Elena froze. Her mother-in-law knew about her son's infidelity, about his plans? "Yes," she replied quietly. "I know everything. I know about Christina, about the child, and about the nursing home." Nina Sergeyevna closed her eyes, tears streaming down her sunken cheeks. When she looked at Elena again, there was so much pain in her gaze that the young woman felt her heart clench. "Forgive me," Nina Sergeyevna whispered. "My fault. Him." Aloud. Elena shook her head, unable to hold back her own tears. "No, not at all. You have nothing to do with this. This is his choice, his decision." "I knew," Nina Sergeyevna said with difficulty. "Always. Knew what kind. He is, after father's death, spoiled, forgave, everything, raised, an egoist." The monitor next to the bed beeped faster. Nina Sergeyevna convulsively squeezed Elena's hand. "Leave. Him," she said clearly. "Don't. Ruin your life. You are good. Deserve better." Elena couldn't believe her ears. The mother was blessing her to leave her son. This was so unexpected, so unlike her mother-in-law, who had always put Alexei's interests above all else. "And you?" Elena asked. "What will happen to you?" "I'll manage." Nina Sergeyevna smiled weakly. "First, time." The doctor looked into the ward. "Time is running out," he said quietly. "The patient needs rest." Nina Sergeyevna made a weak gesture, asking him to wait. Then she looked at Elena again. "Let him. Come in. Want. To tell. Him." Elena nodded, kissed her mother-in-law on the forehead, and left the ward. In the corridor, Alexei was pacing impatiently. "Finally," he snapped irritably. "What did she tell you?" "Go into her," Elena replied quietly. "She's waiting." Alexei walked quickly into the ward. Elena sat down on the chair next to Vera, feeling a strange relief. As if a heavy burden, which she had carried all these years, began to melt away. "What did she say?" Vera asked, looking intently at Elena. "That she knew everything about him," Elena replied quietly. "That she herself raised him as an egoist, and that I should leave him." Vera raised her eyebrows in surprise, but said nothing. They sat in silence, listening to the sounds from the ward. Suddenly, Alexei's loud voice was heard from there. "You can't do this to me! This is my apartment!" A moment later, the ward door burst open, and a furious Alexei flew out. His face was red, his eyes flashed lightning. "You!" He pointed a finger at Elena. "You turned her against me. You told her something." The doctor rushed out of the ward after him. "Stop immediately," he said strictly. "You are in a hospital. There are serious patients here." Alexei, not listening, continued to shout. "She disinherited me. Said she's signing the apartment over to you. You put her up to this. You arranged all this." Elena looked at him in astonishment. Could this screaming, out-of-control man really be her husband? The one she had loved for 3 years. "I knew nothing about the apartment," she said quietly. and I didn't ask for anything." "You're lying," Alexei hissed. "You were always cunning. You wormed your way into my mother's trust, and now you want to leave me with nothing." "Young man," Vera intervened, getting up from her chair. "Calm down. You're harming your mother. More with your shouting than any stroke would." "And who are you anyway?" Alexei snapped at her. "Sitting here with your advice. Don't meddle in other people's business." "I am the one who knew your mother for 30 years, Vera replied calmly. "And if she decided to sign over the apartment, she had her reasons." 2 security guards approached, them attracted by the noise. "Any problems?" one of them asked, looking assessingly at Alexei. The doctor shook his head. "The gentleman reacted too emotionally to his mother's condition. He needs to calm down, preferably outside the hospital." Alexei glared angrily at everyone, then sharply turned around and strode towards the exit. "This isn't the end," he threw over his shoulder. "I won't leave it like this." When the sound of his footsteps faded down the corridor, Elena finally exhaled. Only now did she realize that she had been sitting, tensed up, ready for a blow. "Can I see Nina Sergeyevna again?" she asked the doctor, just for a minute. He hesitated but nodded. "Only for a very short time. She needs rest after such stress." Nina Sergeyevna lay with her eyes closed, but when Elena entered, she looked at her and smiled weakly. "Don't be afraid of him," she said with difficulty. "The apartment will be yours. Deserve it." "Nina Sergeyevna, I didn't do it for the apartment." "I know," her mother-in-law interrupted. "You are good, and I, a bad mother, raised a monster." Elena gently stroked her hand. "You are not a bad mother. You loved him. That's not a crime." "Love. Not like that," Nina Sergeyevna whispered. "I will correct my mistake." Leaving the ward, Elena felt an unprecedented lightness, as if a heavy burden, which she had carried all these years, had disappeared without a trace. The truth turned out to be painful, but it also brought liberation. "Where to now?" Vera asked as they left the hospital. The morning sun blinded Elena. She squinted, looking at the waking town, at the people hurrying about their business, at the blue spring sky. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "But for the first time in a long time, I feel like I can start over." Her phone vibrated in her pocket. An unknown number, but the city code. Elena hesitated for a moment, but still answered. "Hello? Elena?" A confident male voice sounded in the receiver. "This is Mikhail, your neighbor. We met when you were leaving the apartment. Remember? I even helped with the suitcase?" Elena vaguely remembered the tall man she had bumped into in the stairwell when she was leaving Alexei's place. "Yes, of course," she replied. "To what do I owe the call?" "I work at Megapolis Media. I saw your resume in the database. We have an opening for a PR manager. I would like to discuss possible cooperation." Elena froze, not believing her ears. Could life really be giving her a chance to start over? "Who is it?" Vera whispered, intrigued by Elena's expression. "It seems it's my future," Elena replied quietly, feeling her lips curve into a smile of their own accord. The big city met Elena with noise, hustle, and indifference. After the quiet provincial town, everything seemed too loud, too fast, too alien. She stood in the station square with a suitcase, looking around bewildered. Where to go? Where to live? Returning to Alexei's apartment was unthinkable, even despite her mother-in-law's decision to sign it over to Elena. Her phone vibrated, a message from Vera, from when she was traveling. "Nina consistently sends her regards and tells you not to. Worry about her." Elena smiled. Over the last 2 weeks spent in the hospital with her recovering mother-in-law, she had become close to both women. Vera turned out to be a reliable friend, and Nina Sergeyevna was not at all like Alexei had portrayed her. Without his influence, The woman seemed to blossom, becoming softer, warmer. The decision to return to the city was not easy, but it was necessary. The interview at Megapolis Media could not be missed. A chance to restart a career doesn't come along often. Elena dialed Natasha's number, the only friend she could trust. "Natasha? It's me. Can I stay at your place tonight?" Within 1 hour, she was sitting in her friend's cozy kitchen clutching a mug of hot tea. Outside, a spring rain was drizzling, drumming a rhythmic beat on the windowsill. "So, it's all over?" Natasha asked, looking intently at Elena. "Yes," she nodded. "Divorce is a matter of time. The documents are already being processed. And the apartment? Vera said your mother-in-law signed it over to you?" "Signed it over?" Elena smiled faintly. "But I don't know if I want to live there. Too many memories." "You can rent it out and live on that money," Natasha remarked practically. "And for now, you can stay with me. The sofa in the living room is yours." Elena gratefully squeezed her friend's hand. "Tomorrow I have an interview at Megapolis Media. I hope it works out." Natasha whistled. "A serious company. Our competitors. By the way, how did you get in there?" Elena told her about Mikhail's strange call. "The neighbor, you say?" Natasha squinted slyly. "And what does he look like? This mysterious neighbor?" "I don't really remember," Elena answered honestly. "Tall, I think. Dark hair. At that moment, I wasn't really looking." The morning was clear and sunny, as if nature itself was smiling at Elena, promising changes for the better. Dressed in a strict suit and with her hair carefully styled, she headed to the specified address. The Megapolis Media building was located in a modern business center. Glass, chrome, marble. A smiling security guard was on duty in the lobby, who checked her documents and issued a pass. 14th floor, office 1402, he said. "They are expecting you." The company office surprised Elena. Instead of the usual gray partitions and dreary cubicles, the space was open, bright, with colorful accents. Young people were working at computers, talking quietly among themselves. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee hung in the air. "Elena Sergeyevna?" A girl at the reception desk called out to her. "Mikhail Andreevich is waiting for you in the meeting room. Can I offer you coffee or tea?" "Coffee, please," Elena smiled, feeling the tension begin to ease. Mikhail turned out to be exactly as she had vaguely remembered him. Tall, broad-shouldered, with kind brown eyes and a slight stubble. He looked about 35, but the wrinkles at the corners of his eyes gave away a person who smiles a lot. "Glad to see you, Elena," he said, shaking her hand. "Please, have a seat. How was your trip from—" He stumbled, as if not wanting to show that he knew about her situation. "From the province?" Elena helped him. "Thank you. It was fine." The interview went surprisingly easily. Mikhail asked precise but not offensive questions, listened attentively, sometimes nodding. Elena felt that with each passing minute, her nervousness was disappearing, giving way to professional confidence. "Your resume is impressive," Mikhail said when they discussed Elena's previous experience. "Especially the project for TechnoStar. We are just looking for someone with experience in the technology sector." "I must admit," Elena began cautiously, "I haven't been practicing for a long time. For the past few months, I've been taking care of my sick mother-in-law." Mikhail nodded with understanding. "That speaks to your humanity. Business is not just about numbers and contracts, but also about relationships. People who know how to care for others usually become better leaders." 1 hour later, Elena left the office with a contract in her bag. She was hired as a leading PR manager with a salary higher than her previous job. She was due to start in 1 week, which gave her time to sort out matters with the apartment and documents. "Allow me to treat you to lunch in honor of the start of our cooperation," Mikhail suggested, accompanying her to the elevator. "There's an excellent restaurant in the adjacent building." Over lunch, the conversation unexpectedly shifted from work topics to personal ones. I know you've been through a difficult period recently, Mikhail began cautiously. I don't want to seem tactless, but if you need help with finding housing or anything else, the company can assist. Elena looked at him carefully. How do you know about my problems? Mikhail became flustered, looking away. Alexei and I studied at the same university. It's not that we were friends, but we have enough mutual acquaintances. When your resume landed on my desk, I immediately recognized the surname. And you offered me a job out of pity? Elena asked sharply. No, Mikhail replied firmly. Out of professionalism. Your resume speaks for itself, and personal circumstances have nothing to do with work. He paused, then added more quietly. Although, I admit, it was pleasant to offer a job to Alexei's wife. He was always so self-confident. They laughed, and the tension disappeared. Lunch lingered. The conversation flowed easily and naturally. Elena was surprised to find that for the first time in a long time, she felt comfortable in a man's company. As they were leaving the restaurant, a little girl of about 6 years old, with dark pigtails and bright blue eyes, ran up to them. Daddy, she exclaimed, throwing herself at Mikhail. You promised we'd go to the park. An older woman followed behind her. Excuse me, Mikhail Andreevich. Sonia was so insistent on finding you. It's all right, Maria Petrovna. Mikhail smiled, picking up his daughter. I did promise. Elena, allow me to introduce you to my daughter Sonia and our nanny, Maria Petrovna. The girl looked at Elena with curiosity. You're beautiful, she declared unexpectedly. Your eyes are like the princess in my book. Elena laughed, feeling warmth spread through her heart. Thank you, Sonia. Your eyes are very beautiful too. Daddy always says they're like mommy's, the girl said seriously. Will you come to the park with us? Mikhail looked flustered. Sonia, Elena is probably busy. Actually, I'm not busy, Elena smiled. I'd love to go with you if the invitation is still open. The park was full of life. Young parents with strollers, couples in love, elderly people on benches. Sonia darted from one playground to another, while Mikhail and Elena walked behind her, chatting leisurely. My wife died 2 years ago, Mikhail said quietly when the conversation turned to Sonia. Cancer. The illness was fast, leaving almost no time to say goodbye. I'm so sorry, Elena replied sincerely. Sonia was 4 then. She remembers her mother, but the memories are fading. Sometimes it's scary to think that one day my daughter won't be able to remember her face. They sat down on a bench, watching Sonia swing on the swings under the nanny's supervision. You know what's the hardest thing about being a single parent? Mikhail asked. Not the tiredness, not the lack of time, but the inability to share joy. When Sonia first read a word or drew something special, there was no one for me to show it, to no one to share those moments with. Elena remained silent, touched by the frankness of this strong yet vulnerable man. I'm sorry, Mikhail said, catching himself. I don't know why I'm telling you all this. I'm usually not this talkative with people I barely know. It's all right, Elena smiled softly. Sometimes it's easier to talk to someone you hardly know. Sonia ran up to them, flushed and happy. Daddy, can I have some ice cream? Please. Only one, Mikhail said sternly. And no chocolate. It makes your throat sore. But can Elena choose? The girl asked cunningly. Grown-up girls know which. Ice cream is the tastiest. Elena laughed. I think vanilla with caramel syrup would be an excellent choice. See, Daddy, Sonia exclaimed triumphantly. Elena is smart. As the sun began to set, they reluctantly left the park. By the metro, Mikhail suddenly asked, Would you like to have dinner with us? Nothing fancy, just homemade food. With pleasure. Elena agreed, surprising herself with her decisiveness. Mikhail's apartment was spacious and bright. Not luxurious, but cozy, with children's drawings on the walls and bookshelves instead of trendy trinkets. I usually cook myself, Mikhail said, putting on an apron. Nothing fancy, but Sonia doesn't complain. I can help, Elena offered. I'm not a bad cook. I would like to discuss possible cooperation. Elena froze, not believing her ears. Could life really be giving her a chance to start over? Who is it? Vera whispered, intrigued by Elena's expression. It looks like it's my future, Elena replied softly, feeling her lips curve into a smile all by themselves. The big city greeted Elena with noise, bustle, and indifference. After the quiet provincial town, everything seemed too loud, too fast, too alien. She stood on the station square with a suitcase, looking around in confusion. Where to go? Where to live? Returning to Alexei's apartment was unthinkable, even despite his mother's decision to sign it over to Elena. Her phone vibrated. A message from Vera from when she was traveling. Nina consistently sends her regards and says not to worry about her. Elena smiled. In the last 2 weeks spent in the hospital with her recovering mother-in-law, she had grown closer to both women. Vera turned out to be a reliable friend, and Nina Sergeyevna was not at all the person Alexei had made her out to be. Without his influence, the woman seemed to blossom, becoming softer, warmer. The decision to return to the city was not easy, but necessary. The interview at the Megapolis Media Company could not be missed. A chance to restart her career doesn't come along often. Elena dialed Natasha's number, the only friend she could confide in. Natasha, it's me. Can I stay with you tonight? An hour later, she was sitting in her friend's cozy kitchen, clutching a mug of hot tea. Outside, a spring rain was drumming a rhythmic beat on the window ledge. So, it's over? Natasha asked, looking intently at Elena. Yes, she nodded. The divorce is a matter of time. The documents are already being processed. What about the apartment? Vera said your mother-in-law signed it over to you. She signed it over. Elena smiled weakly. But I don't know if I want to live there. Too many memories. You can rent it out and live on that money, Natasha remarked practically. And you can stay with me for now. The sofa in the living room is yours. Elena gratefully squeezed her friend's hand. I have an interview at Megapolis Media tomorrow. I hope it works out. Natasha whistled. Serious company. Our competitors, by the way. How did you get in there? Elena told her about Mikhail's strange call. Your neighbor, you say? Natasha narrowed her eyes shrewdly. And what does he look like, this mysterious neighbor? I don't really remember, Elena answered honestly. Tall, I think. Dark hair. I wasn't really looking closely at that moment. The morning was clear and sunny, as if nature itself was smiling at Elena, promising changes for the better. Dressed in a strict suit and with her hair neatly styled, she headed to the address she'd been given. The Megapolis Media building was located in a modern business center. Glass, chrome, marble. A smiling security guard was on duty in the lobby. He checked her documents and issued her a pass. 14th floor, office 1402, he said. They're expecting you. The company's office surprised Elena. Instead of the usual gray, cubicles and dreary offices, the space was open, bright with colorful accents. Young people worked at computers, talking quietly among themselves. The scent of freshly brewed coffee hung in the air. Elena Sergeyevna? A girl at the reception desk called out. Mikhail Andreevich is waiting for you in the meeting room. Can I offer you coffee or tea? Coffee, please. Elena smiled, feeling the tension begin to ease. Mikhail turned out to be exactly as she vaguely remembered him. Tall, broad-shouldered, with kind brown eyes and a slight 5 o'clock shadow. Looked about 35, but the wrinkles at the corners of his eyes showed a person who smiled a lot. Glad to see you, Elena, he said, shaking her hand. Please, sit down. How was your journey from... He hesitated, as if not wanting to show that he knew about her situation. From the provinces. Elena helped him out. Thank you. It was fine. The interview went surprisingly smoothly. Mikhail asked precise but not offensive questions, listened carefully, and occasionally nodded. Elena felt her nervousness disappear with each passing minute, replaced by professional confidence. Your resume is impressive, Mikhail said, when they discussed Elena's previous experience. Especially the project for Technostar. We are specifically looking for someone with experience in the technology sector. I must admit, Elena began cautiously, I haven't been actively working for a while. In recent months, I've been taking care of my sick mother-in-law. Mikhail nodded with understanding. That speaks to your humanity. Business isn't just about numbers and contracts, but also about relationships. People who know how to care for others usually become the best leaders. An hour later, Elena left the office with a contract in her bag. She had been hired as a leading PR manager with a salary higher than her previous job. She was due to start in 1 week, which gave her time to sort out the apartment and the documents. Allow me to treat you to lunch to celebrate the start of our cooperation, Mikhail offered, escorting her to the elevator. There's an excellent restaurant in the building next door. Over lunch, the conversation unexpectedly shifted from work topics to personal ones. I know you've been through a difficult time recently, Mikhail began carefully. I don't want to seem tactless, but if you need help with finding accommodation or anything else, the company can assist. Elena looked at him intently. How do you know about my problems? Mikhail seemed flustered, averting his gaze. Alexei and we went to the same university. It's not like we were friends, but we have mutual acquaintances. When your resume came across my desk, I recognized the surname immediately. And you offered me the job out of pity? Elena asked sharply. No, Mikhail replied firmly. Out of professionalism. Your resume speaks for itself, and personal circumstances are irrelevant to the job. He paused, then added more quietly, although, I admit, it was satisfying to offer a job to Alexei's wife. He was always so arrogant. They both laughed, and the tension dissipated. Lunch dragged on, the conversation flowing easily and naturally. Elena was surprised to find that for the first time in a long time, she felt comfortable in the company of a man. As they were leaving the restaurant, a little girl of about 6 years old, with dark pigtails and bright blue eyes, ran up to them. Daddy, she exclaimed, rushing towards Mikhail. You promised we'd go to the park. An elderly woman followed behind her. Excuse us, Mikhail Andreevich. Sonia insisted on finding you. It's all right, Maria Petrovna. Mikhail smiled, lifting his daughter into his arms. I did promise. He turned to Elena. Elena, allow me to introduce you to my daughter Sonia and our nanny, Maria Petrovna. The little girl looked at Elena with curiosity. You're pretty, she announced unexpectedly. Your eyes are like the princess in my book. Elena laughed, feeling warmth spread through her heart. Thank you, Sonia. Your eyes are very beautiful, too. Daddy always says they're like mommy's, the girl said seriously. Are you coming to the park with us? Mikhail looked embarrassed. Sonia, Elena is probably busy. Actually, I'm not busy, Elena smiled. I'd love to go with you, if the invitation is still open. The park was full of life, young parents with strollers, couples in love, elderly people on benches. Sonia ran from one playground to another, while Mikhail and Elena walked behind her, chatting leisurely. My wife died 2 years ago, Mikhail said quietly, when the conversation turned to Sonia. Cancer. The illness was fast. It hardly left any time to say goodbye. I'm so sorry, Elena replied sincerely. Sonia was 4 then. She remembers her mom, but the memories are fading. Sometimes it's scary to think that one day my daughter won't be able to remember her face. They sat on a bench, watching Sonia swing on the swings under the nanny's watchful eye. Do you know what the hardest thing about being a single parent is? Mikhail asked. Not the tiredness or the lack of time, but the inability to share joy. When Sonia first read a word or drew something special, I had no one to show it to, no one to share those moments with. Elena remained silent, touched by the frankness of this strong yet vulnerable man. I'm sorry, Mikhail said, catching himself. I don't know why I'm telling you all this. I'm usually not this talkative with people I barely know. It's all right. Elena smiled gently. Sometimes it's easier to talk to someone you hardly know. Sonia ran up to them, flushed and happy. Daddy, can I have some ice cream, please? Only one, Mikhail said strictly. And no chocolate. It makes your throat hurt. Can Elena choose? The girl asked cleverly. Grown-up girls know which ice cream is the tastiest. Elena laughed. I think vanilla with caramel syrup would be an excellent choice. See, Daddy, Sonia exclaimed triumphantly. Elena is smart. When the sun began to set, they reluctantly left the park. By the metro, Mikhail suddenly asked, Would you like to have dinner with us? Nothing fancy, just home cooking. I'd love to, Elena agreed, surprised by her own decisiveness. Mikhail's apartment was spacious and bright, not luxurious, but cozy, with children's drawings on the walls and bookshelves instead of trendy trinkets. I usually cook myself, Mikhail said, putting on an apron. Nothing gourmet, but Sonia doesn't complain. I can help, Elena offered. I'm a pretty good cook. Meanwhile, Sonia pulled a notebook from her briefcases. I have homework, she announced importantly. For math. Papa says that math is fun, but I don't think so. Let's see, Aliona suggested, sitting next to her. Maybe together we can find something interesting in these problems. When Mikhail called them to the table, the homework was successfully completed, and Sonia, with sparkling eyes, was telling Aliona about her collection of shells. During dinner, when Sonia had already gone to bed, Mikhail and Aliona remained alone in the kitchen. The sounds of the city falling asleep drifted through the open window. Music played somewhere in the distance. Thank you for today, Aliona said quietly. I haven't felt like this in a long time. Free. Mikhail looked at her attentively. Aliona, I know you've been through a lot. And maybe now is not the time for new acquaintances. But I would be happy to see you again, not just as a colleague. Aliona felt her heart beat faster. Fear, uncertainty, but also something else. Hope, anticipation of something new and bright. Me too, she simply replied. The following days flew by in worries, searching for an apartment to rent, handling documents, preparing for a new job. Aliona visited her mother-in-law and Vera, who were gradually becoming a real family. Nina Sergeyevna was recovering, and the doctor spoke of a possible discharge in a month. Aliona tried not to think about Alexei, but the city was too small to completely avoid a meeting. She was just leaving the company office after her first day of work when she saw him at the entrance to the business center. We need to talk, he began without greeting her. We have nothing to talk about, Aliona replied calmly. All issues will be resolved by our lawyers. You ruined my life, Alexei hissed, grabbing her arm. You turned my mother against me, took the apartment, and now you've also got a job with my enemy. This was all planned, wasn't it? Let go of me, Aliona said firmly, pulling her hand away. And never touch me again. I won't let you get away so easily, Alexei continued. You won't succeed at anything. I'll see to that. Everything is fine. Mikhail's calm voice sounded nearby. Alexei turned around and flinched, recognizing his former classmate. Ah, so that's what this is about, he ground out through his teeth. Decided to steal my wife, Mikhail. Do you think you'll get away with this? Aliona is no longer your wife, Mikhail replied calmly. And I advise you to leave before I call security. Alexei gave them both a hateful look, and turning around, quickly strode away. Are you all right? Mikhail asked softly when Alexei was out of sight. Alyona nodded, feeling the tremor leave her body. A strange calm filled her soul. She was no longer afraid of Alexei, not afraid of his threats. For the first time in a long time, she felt protected and free. "You know," she said to Mikhail, "it seems I'm starting a new life, and I like it." He smiled, saying nothing, and in that smile, Alyona saw the promise that the best was yet to come. The autumn morning was gloomy and rainy. Alyona stood by the window of her new apartment, which she had rented after the divorce, and watched passers-by hurrying through the puddles. Today was the court day, the final hearing in her divorce case with Alexei. The documents collected by the lawyer lay in a neat stack on the coffee table. In the 3 months that had passed since that memorable day when she caught her husband with his lover, much had changed. A new job at Metropolis Media, new friends, a new apartment, and Mikhail and Sonia, who had become an integral part of her life. The phone rang, and the lawyer's name appeared on the screen. "Good morning, Alyona Sergeyevna," a businesslike male voice said. "I remind you that the hearing is at 11. Alexei has filed a counterclaim for moral damages. He claims you took advantage of his mother's illness to seize property." Alyona sighed. Alexei was not going to give up easily. "That's absurd," she replied calmly. "Nina Sergeyevna herself made the decision about the apartment. We have her written testimony." "Yes, but he's trying to prove she was incapacitated due to illness. In any case, be prepared for an unpleasant scene." The doorbell rang. Alyona said goodbye to the lawyer and went to open the door. Mikhail stood on the threshold with a bouquet of wildflowers. "Thought you could use some moral support," he smiled. "I can give you a ride to court." Alyona accepted the flowers gratefully. Over these months, their relationship had developed slowly but surely. Mikhail did not rush things, understanding that she needed time to heal. They often spent weekends together, he, Alyona, and Sonia, who had become attached to Aunt Alyona, with all her heart. "Thank you," she said quietly. "You have no idea how much this means to me." The courthouse corridor was crowded and noisy. Alyona's lawyer, Sergei Viktorovich, was already waiting for them near the courtroom. "Good afternoon," he greeted, shaking Mikhail's hand. "Alexei is already here with his lawyer, and I must warn you, he is determined." "So are we," Alyona replied, firmly. The courtroom, strict, with high ceilings and wooden panels, was awe-inspiring. Alyona sat next to her lawyer, trying not to look in Alexei's direction, who was sitting across the aisle, but she felt his hateful gaze on her skin. The judge, a middle-aged woman with penetrating eyes, began the hearing. Alyona listened to the lawyer's speeches, answered questions, but everything happening seemed unreal to her, as if she was watching a film about someone else's life. Regarding the counterclaim, Alexei's lawyer said, "Our client claims that Alyona Sergeyevna deliberately turned his mother against him, taking advantage of her asusth state. Nina Sergeyevna, being under the influence of her daughter-in-law, changed her will and gifted the apartment, which rightfully should have gone to her son." "I object," Sergei Viktorovich intervened. "We have Nina Sergeyevna's own testimony, notarized, as well as a medical report on her full capacity at the time of the decision." Alyona listened to this exchange, feeling anger grow inside her. How could he talk about his own mother like that? How could he call it influence when Nina Sergeyevna simply saw her son's true face? "Alyona Sergeyevna," the judge addressed her, "could you explain to the court why Nina Sergeyevna decided to gift you the apartment and not her son?" Alyona took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. "Nina Sergeyevna made this decision after she found out that Alexei had been cheating on me all the time I was taking care of her after her stroke, and that he planned, and I quote, to get rid of 2 burdens, me and his mother, by sending her to a nursing home without her consent." Silence fell in the courtroom. Alexei turned pale and whispered something furiously to his lawyer. This is slander. The lawyer jumped up. The prosecution has no evidence of such statements. On the contrary, Sergei Viktorovich calmly objected. We have the testimony of Vera Petrovna Sokolova, Nina Sergeyevna's neighbor, who was present during many phone conversations between the mother and son. Furthermore, the courtroom door unexpectedly opened. Everyone turned around. An invalid wheelchair appeared in the doorway, pushed by Vera. Nina Sergeyevna sat in the wheelchair, thinner, but with a determined expression on her face. I apologize for being late, Your Honor, Vera said. The flight from our city was delayed due to bad weather. Mom? Alexei gasped, jumping up from his seat. What are you doing here? What I should have done a long time ago, Nina Sergeyevna replied firmly. Her speech was still a little difficult after the stroke, but every word sounded clear. Correcting my mistakes. The judge, slightly taken aback, allowed Nina Sergeyevna to testify. Vera wheeled the chair to the witness stand. Nina Sergeyevna, do you understand that you are under oath and must speak only the truth? The judge asked. I understand, the woman nodded. And that is why I am here. The truth is that my son, Alexei, whom I loved more than life, grew up selfish because of my fault. After my husband's death, I spoiled him, indulged all his whims, turned a blind eye to his actions. She shifted her gaze to her son, who sat with his head down. When I fell ill, Alyona dropped her career to take care of me. And Alexei didn't even come to visit me. Instead, he brought another woman into the house while his wife was nursing her mother-in-law. Nina Sergeyevna turned to the judge. I rewrote the apartment to Alyona not because she manipulated me, but because I wanted to restore justice. This girl lost 3 years of her life with my son and another 6 months taking care of me. She earned this apartment. And my son. She paused for a moment, holding back tears. My son deserves a lesson. Perhaps finally understanding that everything in life has its price, he will become better. At least I hope so. Silence reigned in the hall. Alexei sat with his head bowed low. His lawyer awkwardly shuffled papers, not knowing what to object. Nina Sergeyevna, the judge finally asked, do you confirm that you were fully conscious and acted of your own free will when you made the decision to gift the apartment to Alyona Sergeyevna? I fully confirm it, the woman replied firmly. Moreover, I want to state that I fully support Alyona's decision to divorce and consider my son's claims for compensation unfounded. After Nina Sergeyevna's testimony, the outcome of the case was predetermined. The court ruled to dissolve the marriage and dismissed Alexei's counterclaim for compensation. The apartment remained legally with Alyona. When they left the courtroom, Alexei caught up with them in the corridor. Satisfied? He threw at Mikhail. Stole my wife, took my property. Alexei, stop, Alyona said tiredly. It's over. I didn't take anything from you. Everything that happened is the result of your own actions. And you, Mom. Alexei turned to Nina Sergeyevna. How could you, your own mother, betray your only son? I didn't betray you, Nina Sergeyevna replied softly. You betrayed yourself with your selfishness. I love you, son. That's why I did this. One day you will understand that it wasn't out of revenge, but out of love. Alexei looked at all of them, with hatred and resentment, but something in his mother's words seemed to penetrate deeper than his rage. He turned around and quickly walked towards the exit. Do you think he will ever change? Alyona asked thoughtfully, watching him leave. I don't know. Nina Sergeyevna sighed. But for the first time in his life, my son has faced the consequences of his actions. Maybe this will be the beginning of change. That same evening, they sat in a cozy restaurant not far from the court. Alyona, Mikhail, Sonia, Nina Sergeyevna, and Vera. Celebrating not so much the victory in court, but the beginning of a new chapter in life. Vera and I have decided to live together, Nina Sergeyevna announced, which caused surprised looks. What? Two lonely old ladies are merrier together. Her house is bigger than my apartment. There's a garden there. We'll grow flowers and grumble at the youth. Everyone laughed. Sonia, used to calling Nina Sergeyevna Grandma Nina, sat next to her and enthusiastically talked about her successes at school. And how is your new job? Vera asked Alyona. Do you like it? Very much, Alyona answered sincerely. The team is wonderful. The projects are interesting. And most importantly, I feel like a professional again, not just someone's wife. Mikhail, sitting next to her, quietly took her hand under the table. I have a suggestion, he said. Let's go out of town on the weekend. The weather is supposed to be good. We can walk in the forest, have a barbecue. Hooray! Sonia exclaimed. Can I bring my new ball? Of course, darling, Alyona smiled. And don't forget a warm jacket. It can be cool in the forest in autumn. Watching this scene, Nina Sergeyevna exchanged a knowing look with Vera. These two, Alyona and Mikhail, were clearly made for each other. A calm, reliable man, and a strong but sensitive woman. And Sonia, who so needed a mother's love. After dinner, when Nina Sergeyevna and Vera went to the hotel, and Sonia dozed off in the back seat of the car, Mikhail drove Alyona home. Will you come in? She asked at the entrance. We'll have some tea. Her small rented apartment was warm and cozy. Alyona put on the kettle, and Mikhail stood by the window, looking at the night city. What are you thinking about? She asked, walking up to him. About how strangely life is arranged, he replied. Only 6 months ago we didn't know each other. And now I can't imagine how I lived without you all this time. Alyona smiled, feeling her heart fill with warmth. For the first time in a long time, she was truly happy. You know, she said quietly, when I found out about Alexei's betrayal, I thought my life was over. But it turned out it was just beginning. Mikhail gently took her hands. Alyona, I understand that maybe it's still too early, but... He stumbled, collecting his thoughts. Sonia asks me every day when you're coming to see us again. And I find myself waiting for it just as much as she is. He took a small velvet box from his pocket. This is not a wedding ring, he quickly said, seeing her confusion. Just a gift. A symbol of the beginning of a new relationship. If you're ready, of course. Alyona opened the box. Inside lay an elegant silver ring with a small diamond. Not luxurious, but incredibly beautiful in its simplicity. I'm ready, she quietly replied, putting on the ring. Ready to start all over again. With you. A year later, the four of them, Alyona, Mikhail, Sonia, and their newborn son Andrei, came to visit Nina Sergeyevna and Vera. The women, as planned, had planted a flower garden and were now proudly showing off their achievements. Look, Andreyushka, what pretty flowers, Sonia said, holding her brother in her arms under his father's watchful eye. When you grow up, I'll teach you to distinguish all the plants. Alyona looked at this idyllic picture and couldn't believe her happiness. Who would have thought that betrayal, which caused so much pain, would eventually lead her to true love and family? Nina Sergeyevna came over and took her arm. Happy? She simply asked. Very, Alyona answered sincerely. And you? I am, the elderly woman smiled. You know, I received a letter from Alexei. He's in Petersburg, working at a small company. He writes that he has started going to a psychologist, trying to understand himself. I'm glad to hear that, Alyona said, and it was true. She had long since held no grudge against her ex-husband. I hope he finds his happiness. And we have already found ours. Nina Sergeyevna smiled, looking at Mikhail, who was carefully holding little Andrei in his arms. Alyona looked at her new family. So different, not perfect, but so real. The ring with a small diamond sparkled on her finger, not luxurious, but symbolizing true feeling and a promise that can be kept. Dear listeners, did you like the story? Rate our work with a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the story. Share your impressions in the comments. This is the best way to motivate us to create for you every day. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. Be happy. Be happy.